Brooke and Lindsay have put together a very systematic program today. You've heard from the nutritionists, the sports psychologists, psychiatrists, sports medicine people, all the interesting people. Now you get to hear the lawyers. And Gordie Howe, the great hockey player, used to tell kids, you've got 2 ears and a mouth, and if you keep your ears open and your mouth closed, you'll learn a lot. And I have to tell you, I learn a lot whenever I speak at things like this, but I'll tell you the honest truth, I've never gone to a conference that is as good as this one. I mean, the speakers have set the bar real high. Anybody who's listening today, our country, when you realize how many kids play sports, there's no other activity outside the home that influences so many children of every generation year after year, and that's already been said today. But we would be better off as a country if the good practices that we're talking about today actually came to fruition. So what I want to talk about today is something called the power of the permit. The power of the permit is a legal concept, and it is the acknowledged power of local and state agencies to determine the conditions, the rules and regulations, the standards under which a private user or private individual may use public facilities. There's nothing controversial about this. There's nothing radical about it. I'm not a controversial guy. I don't think. I'm not a radical guy. This is a power that some localities use, most don't know about it, and most don't use it. It's very underutilized. I'll just give you a very simple example. If the local bridge club wants to use a meeting room in the city hall, the power of the permit, they go down to city hall, they fill out a slip, they apply to use the facility. And the city hall determines what the private conditions are, what time you can show up, what time you have to leave, how you have to clean up, how loud your music can be, what kind of food you can bring in. That's the power of the permit. So why can't these same localities say, if you, private user, which might be Pop Warner football, it might be Little League or anything else, you want to use the fields, the courts, the gymnasiums that are public property, which is what most private youth sports programs do, these are the conditions. Concussion safety, other safety issues, mandate safety issues at the local level, which is actually the best place to do it, the most effective place. So this is not controversial, but I want to talk to you about it a little bit. But let me start at the beginning. In the last 5 years in this country, something extraordinary has happened in the way of youth sports safety, and that is, as you've heard today, that all 50 states and the District of Columbia have passed sports concussion legislation. Why is this extraordinary? Because we live in a partisan time. Red states and blue states, you know, all that stuff. Anytime you can get 50 states and the District of Columbia to do anything together, anything, it's a cause for public notice. These 50 concussion, and by the way, these 50 concussion bills, if you read them, they are very similar. They follow a common pattern. The language is different from state to state a little bit. That's to be expected. But they follow a common pattern. The states have obviously been paying attention to one another. They've not only been paying attention to whether they've been cooperating together. Now, when you can get red states and blue states to do that, you ought to jump up and dance. These concussion bills have been passed by red states and blue states. They've been enacted by red legislatures, blue legislatures. They've been signed by red governors, blue governors, and that sort of stuff doesn't happen by accident. Now, people who follow the legislative process understand that lawmakers understand that you pass a bill today, you pass legislation today, you can expect that it's going to be amended from time to time, maybe even repealed, but certainly amended. And a lot of these bills have already been amended, even though the oldest ones are only 5 years old. But there's one amendment that needs to happen. That's not the topic of my talk today, but it's building up to it. More than half of the states have chosen only to regulate interscholastic sports when it comes to concussions. high school, middle school, that sort of thing. They don't regulate private youth sports programs that play locally. And you may say to yourself, how do you regulate a private youth sports program an association run by parents? How does the government tell them what to do? And that leads to the power of the permit. The power of the permit being the authority to say to these programs, if you want to use these fields, here are the standards. Here are the standards you have to follow in order to use them. And you can cover most private youth sports programs in this way, because very few private youth sports programs own their own fields, their own gymnasiums, their own basketball courts. They play on public facilities, and the license, the permit is usually at a reduced rate, or might even be free on the condition that on the rationale that you're performing a public service. And these are the conditions. But who are the local agencies that control these things? There are only a couple of them. In any community, think of your own community. In most communities, the agencies are either the Parks and Recreation Department, who owns the parks and fields and runs them, or the public school district. You play on school fields, school gymnasiums. So if the Board of Education and the Parks and Recreation Department set standards together, these things can be enforced. And I don't think this is controversial. Now, when I first started looking at the power of the permit, I wrote a chapter of a book on sports culture. And I took the position that in order to get to use public fields, these private youth sports programs, the mandate ought to be from the Parks and Rec and the department and the school district, that they mandate fair and equal opportunity for all players, and equal time, roughly equal time for players. Well, that went over like a lead balloon. Because I said at the beginning I'm not controversial, I'm not radical, I was lying to you. There's a utopian streak that I have, and I thought this would be a wonderful idea. It has not actually caught on. But the point is that concussions, I think, would be different. Politicians, who are the ones who pass the legislation, and agency heads, who are the ones that administer the fields, being in favor of concussions is like being in favor of the measles or something like that. These legislators, you don't know exactly why they do what they do sometimes, but when you get the red states and the blue states doing it, most of these legislators are parents, presumably. They do get it. And the three mandates that that these legislatures have enacted, very common in all the states. Mandate number one: education, preseason education and information to parents and coaches. And I'd like to think that if that education and information comes out, that most parents and coaches will get it. If you look at the statistics, the falling numbers of kids who are playing football, for example, I mean, a lot of parents do get it. The second condition is that if a child is suspected of having a concussion, you must take him out of the game or practice immediately. Third mandate from the states is that the player cannot come back until there's a written medical clearance. Not only are these common sense, but they're not budget busters either. There have been proposals, and there's a bill that I think is going to be reintroduced in the New York City Council this autumn, that says you can't play on city fields unless you have a medical doctor in attendance or a trainer. Now that would be a real good idea, but it certainly costs money. That's not today's topic. That's for minds greater than mine. But these things are not budget busters at all. I was president of a youth hockey program for 12 years, from 1989 up to about 2000. And, well, first of all, you take the first mandate, preseason education for parents and coaches. I think almost every program now does what we did back then, and that is there's a preseason parents meeting. Or there's a preseason players meeting, probably both, maybe more than one meeting for each. It wouldn't cost much money to buy a DVD disc and show the parents a half-hour film on concussions. or to invite a local doctor or pediatrician to come in and talk to the parents as a guest speaker. That's cost-free. Taking a child out of a game if the child has an injury or suspected concussion, well, that's common sense. When in doubt, take them out. Any coach should do that. You don't have to be a doctor to do that. If a kid comes back woozy or something, you exercise common sense. It'd be nice if you had a trainer on the bench. You may not, but it's cost-free. No playing until medical clearance happens. Well, medical clearance costs money. You got to take the child to a doctor, but you should be doing that anyway. The parents may have to pay for it, but that's something they should do and probably would do if they had the education to understand what a concussion is. So these are not budget busters. This is not like mandating equal time. It's like mandating common sense. So the power of the permit is a way locally to enforce concussion regulations. For example, and the typical locality can decide what they're going to mandate. As at the very least, the locality, the city council, the Parks and Rec department, the school board, whoever's fields are going to be used, say, if you happen to be in a state that has not yet extended its coverage to private youth sports programs, you just say you want to use our fields in our locality, you will heed the statewide mandates. The statewide mandates, not from the state legislature, but from us, apply in our community. And any other mandates that you can think of. So this is what the power of the permit can do. And since we are in Massachusetts, I probably should quote Tip O'Neill, former U.S. House Speaker, who said that all politics is local. What he was talking about, he said that, look, no matter what happens in Washington, no matter what happens maybe at the state level, what happens in the local community is the thing that people vote on, yay or nay, but it's also the things that most affect people's lives. Well, ultimately, all safety is local too. No matter what the state mandates, no matter what the National Youth Sports Governing Boards mandate, I mean, rules are set nationally, they're applied by state associations usually. At the high school level, they are applied by the state activities group. No matter what those rules say, what really means something, and Commissioner Collins was talking about it just a minute ago, is what goes on in the local game, what goes on locally. You can pass legislation here in Boston, statewide legislation, and Massachusetts statute's quite good, actually. But the legislators don't know. Nobody knows in Boston what's going on a Saturday night at a game in Springfield or someplace. But you know, you're using a ball field that's operated by the Parks and Rec department or by the school district. They have reason to know. I mean, they'll know. And there was just an article a couple of weeks ago in one of the New Jersey papers, one of the New Jersey towns, the city council had a meeting and told the Pop Warner Group, you're not going to use the fields this year unless something changes because you didn't follow the state concussion mandates last year. You didn't report the concussions. There was an estimate that there were about 10 of them and you only reported 2. You better get your act together or else we're not going to let you use the fields. And the city council president was exactly right about that. We have the power to keep you from using the fields. This is something that, I mean, I'd like to believe that if parents understood and really appreciated what concussions are all about, they would expect the school district or the Parks and Recreation Department to take this sort of approach. Every community is different. I mean, some communities, there may be political pressures or something like that, but locally, until the states get around to applying their mandates not only to interscholastic sports, but also to private programs that are played locally on publicly owned fields, the people who run the publicly owned fields, the city agencies, ought to be applying the statewide mandates plus whatever else they think is appropriate. And the way I would do it practically is you bring in a parents group. I mean, you have the usual conference, get the public relations and the community input and everything, but not simply act as a real estate agent, because what happens in a lot of communities is the Parks and Rec department doesn't want to get involved, the school district doesn't want to get involved. School district, after all, is not in the business of running private youth sports programs. They're in the business of running interscholastic programs. The Parks and Rec department may feel as though it doesn't have enough staff to do anything but be a real estate agent. Sign over the fields, let anything happen that happens. And what happens, talking about that chapter that I wrote that didn't go over real well among a lot of people, they'll sign over the fields to the parents, for example, who want to pay the most. This is an advertisement, an unpaid advertisement for the chapter that never went anyplace. But they sign over the fields, sign an agreement with a local program that is basically an elite program, and half the kids in the town are cut out, or they get. There was a town in Minnesota about 5 or 6 years ago that made national coverage. It could be any place, but they had a basketball program of about maybe 100 kids, and 50 of them made the travel teams, and 50 played house. And the people who played the kids who played the travel team got like 10 times the court time that the house league kids got. And when the complaints were made, the school district said, it's a private program. There's nothing we can do. Well, there is something they can do because they control the fields and the power of the permit. So the term power of the permit, really the key word is power. You've got the power to mandate what private youth sports programs do on the fields that you control. And when it comes to concussions and it comes to other safety issues and safety protocols, it is a very underused power in America. It's too bad, because this is not controversial. It's not legally debatable, really. As a matter of fact, in New York, about 2 years ago, the New York City Council did pass an ordinance that said no aluminum baseball bats in high school games on fields controlled by the school board in New York City. And a lawsuit was brought. That lawsuit didn't even go to trial. The judge dismissed it and found, in strong language, found for the school board without a trial. So this power clearly exists. It's not debatable. The only possible limit on it would be you would not be allowed, the school board or the Parks and Rec department would not be allowed to condition use of programs on a condition that would otherwise violate constitutional rights. For example, you couldn't say this field is available only to white people, not black people, or only men, not only boys, not girls. That's race discrimination or gender discrimination, but there's no discriminatory claim that can be sustained by saying that you're trying to protect kids from youth sports concussions. So this is a clear right. It is a clear line of authority. It needs to be used more often until we can get the majority of states who have not extended their coverage to private youth sports programs to actually extend the coverage that way. Until it can be done statewide, it needs to be done locally. Anyway, I'm I think I'm the next to the last speaker, or it might be two more after me, but again, what I've heard today and what you've heard today, is extraordinary. It really is. We would be better off if these topics came to fruition. This is only the start of the MomsTEAM Institute, but this will continue to grow and in your communities and other communities. This has been a very worthwhile day. I didn't think that yesterday morning at 2:30 in the morning when my alarm went off in Columbia, Missouri, and I realized I had to get picked up at 5 o'clock to get an 8 o'clock flight in the morning to come here. But I'm so glad I did, and you've been a very good audience, and it's just great to listen to these kind of people talk. It's uplifting and it's inspiring after all the years of coaching. And one of the things about coaching is that, there are a lot of short-term frustrations with it. You get parents that are a little bit difficult, or maybe a little more than a little bit difficult. The long-term rewards are, first of all, the relationships that you have with the kids. I spent 3 hours yesterday afternoon when I got in with a fellow that I coached 30 years ago who's now 40 years old. I hadn't seen him in about 25 or 30 years. That's one reward. The other reward is listening to people like the speakers here today who really do get it. And I don't think any of you folks would be in the audience all day today listening to us unless you also get it. So as Spike Lee said, do the right thing. Thanks very much.